Listen, I know people, including members of my family, who've had a much worse time getting off of SSRIs than they did than people have getting off of heroin. Well, it's the withdrawal period is, I mean, and it's written on the label.
I have some experience with this myself. Mr. Kennedy, this is personal for me. When I was a young woman and I was struggling with depression, thankfully, I had the resources to help me get through it. I think that everyone should have access to that care. And your job as secretary is to expand access to care, not to spread lies and misinformation.
The first order of business for RFK Jr., now that he has been confirmed as the Secretary for Health and Human Services, is to focus on a class of drugs that treat depression, anxiety, and mood disorders. His argument is that these drugs are overprescribed, that they're not as harmless as the pharmaceutical industry would have you believe. And for individuals who want to stop taking said drugs, the withdrawals are pretty terrible. So let's go over what he is planning to do, what he's not gonna do, and what the reality is when it comes to this class of drugs, also known as SSRIs. So he outlined his plans recently, saying that he's calling for the federal government to investigate the root causes of a broad range of conditions, including autism, ADHD, asthma, obesity, multiple sclerosis, and psoriasis. So I have psoriasis. It sucks. I'm interested to see what he finds from his, inquiry or deep investigation into it. But nonetheless, while there weren't any mentions of things like childhood vaccines, which is a good thing, he did also mention these SSRIs and the multitude of mental health issues that both adults and children are struggling with. The government, he said, would assess the prevalence of and treat and threat posed by the prescription of selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, antipsychotics, and mood stabilizers. Again, these are known as SSRIs. We're talking about drugs like Prozac, Zoloft, Lexapro, you get the picture. Now, Kennedy has been ringing the alarm about what he believes is the overprescription of SSRIs for a while now. He has suggested during an X Spaces that he took part in 2023 that tremendous circumstantial evidence suggested that people taking antidepressants were more likely to carry out school shootings. He did not provide any research or data to reinforce that notion. Researchers so far have not found a link between the two. And in fact, studies suggest that only a minority of school shooters were prescribed medication before they carried out the tragic crimes that they carried out. Now, a big thing to also point out about RFK Jr.'s aversion to SSRIs is that he seems to be confusing dependency with addiction. So he's comparing people who stop taking SSRIs as individuals who stop using heroin, but we're talking about two different things here. It is true that individuals who take SSRIs for a long period of time can develop a dependence on them. And if they stop taking the drugs cold turkey, they will suffer some serious withdrawal symptoms. If they wean off the drugs too quickly, they can also suffer from similar consequences. But again, dependency and addiction are two different things. Individuals can often experience negative symptoms when they stop taking them, especially if they do so abruptly. This is similar to physical dependence, but it is different from addiction. And according to the National Alliance on Mental Illness, up to 80% of people who abruptly stop taking these drugs or reduce the dosage too quickly suffer from withdrawal symptoms. Now, Professor Keith Humphreys, who's an expert in psychology and behavioral sciences at Stanford University, says that antidepressants and heroin are in different universes when it comes to addiction risk. In my 35 years in the addiction field, I've met only 2 or 3 people who thought they were addicted to antidepressants versus thousands who were addicted to heroin and other opioids. Now, the other thing that I'll just say is I am open to inquiry into an investigation to see whether there is evidence of overprescription of these types of drugs as it pertains to minors. Look, the pharmaceutical industry, I mean, and we've done so many stories about this, takes doctors on vacations and gifts them. And that's how the opioid crisis became such a monster. It's because of the corrupting influence of pharmaceutical lobbyists and how they try to encourage doctors to prescribe drugs, in some cases overprescribe drugs. So I think that it is maybe possible that there's overprescription. However, I get a little uncomfortable with RFK Jr. kind of minimizing the importance of these drugs for people who genuinely do need them, because it has improved the quality of life for a lot of Americans. And so we have to be careful. I mean, when it came to the opioid crisis, when the federal government came in and they started implementing pretty harsh restrictions, that ended up, turning into a heroin crisis and then a fentanyl crisis. And then people who genuinely did need those pain medications were unable to access them, even though they were struggling with chronic pain. So this is a delicate matter. And so I want him to proceed with caution. Those are my thoughts. What do you think, Cenk?
So first, I'm gonna go to our members. They're split on this. So go to tyt.com/join and become a member and be part of the show, get all of our content. Jesus Take the Wheel says, as someone who's been on SSRIs for most of my life due to a very abusive childhood, I can say that these drugs are life-saving for people dealing with depression, myself included. On the other hand, worst case scenario, Dragon says, I agree, SSRIs are being overprescribed. We need to pay for therapists and fix our effed up culture. You're not crazy, the culture is. So I agree with both.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with both
same.
of them. Yeah, so what do I think of RFK Jr.'s plans? Well, that's a giant, it depends. So what does it depend on? Well, what is his plan? We don't know it yet. So if right now he's saying, let's study them. Great, I got no problem studying them. Study away, I love science, okay? And if you make up junk science, then I'm not gonna love it. But if you're doing real meta studies, that would be terrific. If you wanna do a whole new study, you wanna do a whole new 10 studies, it's not gonna make it any difference in the budget at all. It's a drop in the bucket. It's not even a drop. So have at it, Hoss, give us more science. And so am I foreclosing the possibility that these drugs, might be dangerous in ways that we don't necessarily expect? No, I'm not foreclosing that possibility. Look, there's been a lot of studies on it already, so I'm more likely to believe that. On the other hand, it's not like the pharmaceutical companies don't try to affect studies. So we have to be careful about that as well. And I would like that to be as neutral a process as possible. So on the other hand, if Kennedy says, so I'm a little concerned about this, so that's why we're banning all that medication now. I'd be like, whoa, no. Like there's a lot of people that it helps. And so far the studies say that it is relatively safe. So, but he hasn't said that, okay? So if he switches over to that side, then I'm gonna have huge problems with it. But in terms of finding out more, I don't see any harm in it.
And by the way, concerns regarding the overprescription of these specific of this specific class of drugs those concerns have existed for a long time, and not just in the United States. There have been researchers in the UK who have been concerned about this as well. I want to just quickly go to graphic 7 here, where it was reported that in the US, antidepressants are among the most prescribed medicines. The majority prescribed by primary care doctors, not mental health experts, according to the Yale Journal of Biology and Medicine. And to our viewers' point about how people need access to therapy, I totally agree with you on that, because a lot of insurance companies, they don't cover talk therapy. Insurance companies make it difficult, and talk therapy is expensive. It really is. If you're paying for that out of pocket, it might end up that it's cheaper to just take a prescription drug, but that might not be the best answer for you. So that is a legitimate concern. Around 13.2% of US adults were using antidepressants between 2017 and 2018. And that's according to the CDC. And the most recent National Health and Nutrition Examination survey. This number is believed to have increased since, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. And in 2023, the UK, which actually ranks one place below the United States in regard to the number of people taking antidepressants, a group of medical professionals looked into this. And so over the past decade, the group explains in an open letter in the British Medical Journal, antidepressant prescriptions have almost doubled in England, rising from 47.3 million in 2011 to 85.6 million in 2022 to 2023. Over 8.6 million adults in England are now prescribed SSRIs annually, and that's nearly 20% of adults, with prescriptions set to rise over the next decade. And look, these drugs obviously, like all prescription drugs, have side effects, including weight gain, sexual dysfunction, bleeding, dizziness that can lead to falls. And so there are side effects. There is concern that the corrupting influence of pharmaceutical companies is leading to the overprescription of these drugs. I have no problem with anyone looking more deeply into this issue. But yeah, I would be 100% against banning these drugs because, again, they have improved the lives of countless people, not just in America, but obviously across the world as well. We just want to be more careful and ensure they're not being overprescribed.
Yeah, so our members are super split on this. We got a poll on it too. Are you worried about RFK Jr. looking into this? The polls are always in the live chat. 67% saying they're worried. So watch the show Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock Eastern. You'll get to participate that way as well. So Jackal Dragon 1991 says, on Twitch, does RFK want to know what happens when I don't take my antidepressants? Right. On the other hand, Big B510 says antidepressants suck and absolutely give horrible side effects. F anyone that disagrees with this. First of all, don't, because a lot of people disagree, and you might have had a different experience than other people. But there are many experiences like yours, so that's why I think if it starts with a conversation. And we look into whether things are being overprescribed, I would view that as a good thing. And remember, guys, if we had had this conversation about Oxy, 10, 15 years ago, a lot of the doctors would have said, no, it's totally fine. We're not overprescribing. Everything is fine, just trust us. And it turns out in that case, everything wasn't fine and they were overprescribing and Oxy was not doing what it said it was doing. So let's look into it more without taking any rash actions and taking anything off the market.